My name is Christian Nix, also known as the Barefoot Doctor. This is Barefoot Medicine Training, Better Living Through Ancient Healing Secrets. The topic of today's short video is something that is not specifically about medicine, but it's something of a pet peeve of mine for reasons that you'll understand shortly. But also, it might be the single area of greatest confusion cross-culturally. What I mean here is, I studied ancient medicine from other parts of the world. In particular, if you're gonna study ancient medical systems, you will end up studying medicine as it was developed in Asia. And there are important reasons for that. And even if you skipped studying medicine that's from old cultures like China, for example, you would be forced to come to the conclusion that all ancient medical systems from Central America, where I ended up with my mentor, all the way to the opposite side of the planet, and a bunch of places in between, where all the ancient medical systems were focused on some of the things, namely how to cure chronic disease, that modern medicine, mainstream, high-tech modern medicine isn't good at. So I'm not talking specifically about how to heal your chronic condition here. What I am going to talk about, and what I think is most important for people, especially in Western culture, to understand is this concept of, and this misapprehension about the concept of the ego. People talk all the time. I guarantee you can hear some idiot flapping his gums about this guy has a big ego. It's always used as a pejorative. In other words, the word ego is used in modern parlance, in the vernacular of common everyday speech, to mean self-importance. In fact, if you look at, there's probably data where you could search this, the use of the term narcissist. Now, if you know the ancient myth about Narcissus and how he looked into the pool of water and saw his reflection and fell in love with his own reflection and couldn't take his eyes off it and came to grief because he was so enamored of his own image, this is a curious thing. The truth, of course, is that in the West, ego is not purely about self-importance. The deeper truth, of course, is that everybody is somewhat self-important, right? I mean, if my neighbor dies in a car wreck, well, I care about that a lot less than if I died in a car wreck. That's a normal human reaction. I might love my neighbor. As it happens, I don't. But if something happened to somebody other than me and it was a cause for grief, I wish it didn't happen to either of us. But if it had to happen to somebody, better him than me. And I think that's a normal human reaction. The idea that you're somehow supposed to be so concerned with being small or not having any sense of self-importance is a disaster. And it's a disaster because it's false. It's just not true, right? You care about yourself because that's the way you're wired. It's a natural reflexive behavior for an organism to be most concerned about its own survival and well-being. There's nothing wrong with it. The uptick in, oh, you're a narcissist, or what I've heard for decades and decades when I first became really aware of this confusion that, oh, the answer to all your problems is to give up your ego. And I went on a bit of a merry chase. It didn't take me long to get to the bottom of this, but the reason it's such a bugaboo for me and the reason it's such a pet peeve when I hear this is no person who ever uttered the words, that guy needs to give up his ego or you should give up your ego, the problem is your ego, right? You have too much of an ego, you have a big ego. When people say this, they are never the ones offering to give up their sense of self-importance. And so the solution to this riddle and the misunderstanding that is wrapped around this word is, I think, twofold. And the first step is, number one, your ego is not only your self-importance. Yeah, okay, be a little less self-important if you're a prick and you're hard to be around and, you know, you're always sort of crying wolf because you need attention or whatever. Like, be mature about the fact that other people might be important too. Okay, I mean, most people can grok that, right? When kids are super annoying, it's usually because they want attention. It's like, just relax, right? Right? Hopefully they grow and mature and realize like, oh, I'm not the only person here. Maybe I shouldn't be quite so demanding of being the focus of attention. Okay, that makes sense, right? The maturation process that diminishes self-importance, at least to a degree that's manageable for the people around you, is not a bad thing. But your ego is more than that. The reason why it's such a pisser to hear people talk about, oh, you should give up your ego, is because the ego is the center of your personality. It's the center of your persona. The person that you show to the society of other people around you, the person that I am right now recording this video, this is my ego speaking. This is coming from the center of my personality. And if you said to me, well, who is that, right? What is that for you? Well, I'm a guy that went adventuring around the world in my mid-20s. I ended up in Central America. I met an old healer man, Don Jaime. I apprenticed with him, and I learned a bunch of stuff about ancient natural healing, and I worked in hospitals. I pitched a hospital there in 2005, and I pitched another hospital in North America, and I got to teach doctors and travel and teach what I knew to the highest level of mainstream medicine, including Cleveland Clinic. So I had quite an adventure. That's my ego. That's who I am. That's partly who I became because of that experience. And you could look at your life and look at the experiences that you've had, and you could determine why your personality is, in part, the way that it is, based on the parents and experiences and challenges that you overcame, etc., etc. So talking about the ego as if it's some unmitigated evil that's part of our life, that it has to be gotten rid of, what this really means, and the reason this is such a confusing topic, Western culture decided long before any of us were born that individuality was the way to go. And we created an entire cultural milieu, including institutions that defended the right of the individual. As long as you're not fucking things up for somebody else, you're allowed to be as individualistic as you wish. Currently, we're living under the empirical rule of a man with a fabulously large ego, right? A sense of self-importance and a sense of self that probably supersedes almost anything that the world has seen since ancient Rome, right? Even then, right? People were more collectivist in nature, collectivism being the opposite of individuality. And so Donald Trump is maybe the penultimate, and maybe this is the high water mark. Maybe nobody comes after him with a bigger sense of individuality. He is a historic figure. Whatever you think of the man, he is a historic figure. And he is a historic figure because, in his own words, right, he's got the world spinning in his hand. Whether we come to ill or to grief because of that, well, I guess we'll all find out. But my point is, it's not like there's no argument to be made for individual initiative, courage, the kind of character traits that go along with a highly developed individual persona. Not only that, the development of individuality, i.e. of ego consciousness, where you're aware that you're a separate individual self that's not the same as that person over there or everyone else around you, has been the envy of a good portion of the world, and not without justification. To have no ego, if you go to a culture that degrades and suppresses and is dismissive of individuals having any kind of personal individual agency, you're not allowed to sort of stick your head above the crowd kind of cultures. Where do you find that? In Asia, primarily. The rule in those cultures is you must obey what the group decides. You are not allowed to rock the boat. You are not allowed to paint your hair blue and wreck the harmony of the society. Is it better? It's not better or worse. It's what they've chosen in their culture. It's not that somebody decided that. The ancient cultures of Asia developed in a way that said group harmony is superior to individuality because individuals bring chaos. Okay, we decided, no, individuality is good because you get tremendous innovation. You find geniuses. You find people who are so brilliant at what they do that they pull the whole group along. Which system is better? Neither one is better. They're different. And also, they're complementary. You must take account of the collective, no matter how individualistic you are. You could say that the illness in the West is this misunderstanding. Individuality has become perverted, pun intended, to the point where, this whole thing about transgender ideology is that, well, I'm such an individual that you have to play along with my fantasy. No, actually, that's not individuality, that's mental illness. You cannot force people to go along with what you want to be true about the world, no matter how upset you get about it. Nobody has to play along with your dopey ideas about reality. You do not get to pretend that the world is some other way and then order other people with the threat of having a meltdown or violence or whatever the case may be, that everybody else has to pretend along with you. That's childish, right? Can't do that. It doesn't work, right? It's why the whole thing has blown up. I know there's people that still stomp their feet and harumph about why transgenderism has to be expected. Fuck off. No, it doesn't. And I know transgender people. Some of them are like decent people. But you don't get to force anybody to obey your fantasy. That's a rampant running amok of individuality. That's an example of self-importance that's so far out of whack that you got to tell people, please shut the fuck up. The collective matters. You cannot destroy the harmony of the group. But you don't want a group that is so beat down and sedate that everybody's so afraid to stand up and say, look at this, the emperor has no clothes. Because that's a way for a society to go off the rails. Ancient places and old cultures, like the Chinese, for example, are very convinced that their system is better because it provides order. Okay, we'll see. The West has been fairly successful promoting individuals. Elon Musk is a tremendous, tremendous achiever. That's based on ego individuality. Nothing else could have created that level of competence and success and all the rest. Whatever faults you want to say about these people, I think you understand the point that there is a level of individuality, an acceptance, and the permission to be an individual in a culture like ours is a tremendous, tremendous adventure. You can go have an adventure nobody else has ever had ever before in the history of the planet. That's tremendous. Most people think that that's exciting. I happen to think that that's exciting. I enjoyed very much going on my own adventure. I'm still on it, okay? But this misunderstanding of the ego that, number one, says that it's all bad. Anytime you hear ego, it's always equated with negativity. And it's a dumb way of thinking. Carl Jung talked about this, and it was Jung's work that really sorted me out on this. To give up your ego, if you say give up your ego in the West, if a Western person says this, that's still their ego saying that. You understand? To give up your ego, you're like a cow in a field. You're not even aware that you are a unique, special entity. You just sort of exist. The romantic idea, the romanticizing, what Edward Said in his book, Orientalism, what he referred to as Orientalism, really involves the individual just disappearing, right? You go sit in a monastery and you do nothing and meditate and disappear. You try to dissolve your own unique individuality into nothingness. I don't recommend it. You're going to get to the point of nothingness soon enough. It's called death. The dissolution of ego, the dissolution of your unique individuality happens at death. Don't be in a rush for it, okay? You have a chance in the West to do something unique. You should be cultivating that. Here, especially, I'm talking to young men. It's young men who have paid the highest price, the greatest level of just vitriol and criticism and hatred for wanting to be better and unique and going on an adventure. If you're a young man and somebody's trying to prevent you from going on the adventure, that person is your enemy, period. Now, it's not to say you can't gather some wisdom from it. And it's not to say that whatever your adventure is may not rock the boat for some people. They may have their reasons for wanting you to, go easy, right? You're going to upset the family. You're going to overturn the group. Okay, fair enough. But that's your job. Your job is to go on that adventure. So I'm against this whole anti-ego thing, understood in its proper dimensions, in its proper context, at a deeper level than just, ego equals self-importance. Your ego is not only good, it's not only necessary, you can't live without it. In the West, you cannot survive without a strong, developed, highly developed sense of your own individuality. So get busy building your individuality and make it worthwhile. That's my message to you. Thanks very much. That's enough out of me. If you enjoyed this channel and you want to hear more videos like this, first of all, put in the comments. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Are you pissed that I've said what I've said? Take me to task if you dare. I'd love to have a dialogue with you. Okay? That's enough out of me. I'll be back with more great stuff. Thanks again.